From the moment I could remember, I existed in the shadow of my older sister, Serena. She was the sun, a blazing orb of perfection in our parents' eyes. I was, at best, the moon, a pale reflection, always orbiting, never quite shining with my own light. Serena was effortlessly beautiful, academically brilliant, and socially magnetic. She played the violin, excelled at tennis, and always knew the right thing to say, even if it felt practiced and hollow to me. I, on the other hand, was the quiet observer, the one who preferred the company of books and sketching pads to boisterous gatherings. I was the one who struggled with maths but found solace in poetry, the one who dreamed of painting vast landscapes while Serena meticulously planned her ascent up the corporate ladder. My parents, bless their pragmatic hearts, saw my inclinations not as unique talents, but as inconvenient detours from the path of sensible success. Serena was their investment. I was their enigma, a project they hadn't quite figured out how to monetize or showcase. Growing up, every achievement of Serena's was met with fanfare, every slight misstep of mine with a sigh and a, "Why can't you be more like your sister Alara?" It wasn't overt cruelty, not usually. It was the insidious drip, drip, drip of constant comparison that eroded my self-worth over the years. I learned to internalize their disappointment, to wear the label of the artistic one or the quiet one as a shield, even as it sometimes felt like a brand. Serena, of course, reveled in this dynamic. She thrived on being the golden child, and my perceived shortcomings only made her shine brighter. She didn't actively sabotage me. She didn't need to. Our parents did all the heavy lifting of comparison for her. But her quiet smirks, the way her eyes would glint whenever I was reprimanded, spoke volumes. Her favorite phrase, delivered with a saccharine smile, was always, "Oh, Alara, you're just so different." It was never a compliment. After college, the chasm between us widened into a canyon. Serena, predictably, landed a coveted position at a high-profile marketing firm straight out of university. She climbed the ranks with astonishing speed, her LinkedIn profile a testament to her relentless ambition and polished presentation. She moved into a chic city apartment, drove a luxury car, and dressed in designer clothes. She was, in every measurable way, a resounding success in the eyes of our family and society. I, on the other hand, pursued a career as a freelance illustrator. It was a path fraught with uncertainty, inconsistent income, and the constant need to hustle for clients. My studio was a corner of my small apartment, my car a decade-old sedan, and my clothes were more practical than fashionable. To my parents, this was not a career. It was a hobby I hadn't yet grown out of. Every family gathering became an interrogation. "How's the art going, Alara?" My father would ask, his voice dripping with a carefully masked pity. "Are you making enough to pay your rent? Serena just got another promotion, you know." My mother would add, as if the juxtaposition was meant to inspire me rather than crush me. Serena would simply sip her wine, a knowing, almost pitying smile playing on her lips, her eyes silently confirming their assessment. I was the family failure, the cautionary tale, the one who chose the difficult, unrewarding path. I tried to explain the joy I found in my work, the satisfaction of bringing stories to life through my art, the freedom of being my own boss. But my words were always met with blank stares or a polite nod that signaled they weren't truly listening. They saw only the lack of a stable salary, the absence of a prestigious title, the perceived lack of a real future. The narrative of my failure was so deeply ingrained in our family lore that it felt like an unshakable truth, a label I would carry forever. It hurt, deeply, but over time I built walls around my heart. I learned to compartmentalize, to protect the fragile flame of my passion from their cold judgment. I still attended family functions, a dutiful daughter, but I went with a sense of resignation, bracing myself for the inevitable onslaught of comparisons and thinly veiled criticism. This particular family party was no different. It was my parents' 40th wedding anniversary, an elaborate affair held at a rented banquet hall. The air was thick with the clinking of champagne glasses, the murmur of polite conversation, and the saccharine scent of lilies. I had arrived early, helping my mother arrange the floral centerpieces, trying to be useful, trying to earn a sliver of their approval. But even as I meticulously placed each stem, I could feel the familiar tension coiling in my stomach. Serena, of course, arrived fashionably late, making an entrance that drew every eye in the room. She was draped in a stunning emerald green gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, her hair impeccably styled, her smile radiant and confident. She was the picture of success, the embodiment of everything our parents admired. She swept through the room, accepting compliments, exchanging air kisses, radiating an aura of effortless triumph. I watched her from a quiet corner, a small, almost invisible figure in a modest navy dress, feeling the familiar pang of inadequacy. After a while, I saw her making her way towards me, a tall, distinguished-looking man in a sharp suit by her side. My heart sank. This was it, the public display, the ritual humiliation. I knew it in my bones. Serena's smile was wider than usual, a predatory gleam in her eyes that sent a chill down my spine. She pulled the man closer, her hand resting possessively on his arm. "Alara," she announced, her voice a little too loud, designed to carry over the gentle hum of conversation. "I want you to meet someone very important. This is Mr. Harrison Thorne, my boss, the CEO of Thorne Innovations." Mr. Thorne offered a polite, almost imperceptible nod. He was a man in his late 50s, with intelligent, piercing blue eyes that seemed to take in everything without betraying a single emotion. His presence was calm, almost understated, yet it commanded attention. I offered a small, awkward smile, extending my hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Thorne." His handshake was firm, his gaze steady, analytical. I felt an unexpected flicker of nervousness under his scrutiny, as if he could see right through my carefully constructed facade. Then Serena tightened her grip on his arm, her smile widening into a triumphant, mocking grin. She turned to Mr. Thorne, her voice dripping with a theatrical pity that made my skin crawl. "And Mr. Thorne, this is my sister, Alara. She's the failure of our family." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. They weren't new words. I'd heard them, or variations of them, countless times. But never before had they been delivered with such public relish, such calculated cruelty to someone outside our immediate circle. My cheeks flushed crimson, a burning heat spreading through my face. I felt a familiar tremor start in my hands, a desperate urge to disappear into the polished floorboards. I could feel every eye in the vicinity turning towards us, drawn by the sudden, sharp shift in the atmosphere. My parents, who had been chatting nearby, caught Serena's words. Instead of intervening, instead of offering a word of comfort or rebuke, they simply laughed. A short, brittle laugh from my mother, a booming, dismissive chuckle from my father. They nodded in agreement, their faces conveying a mixture of embarrassment and resignation, as if to say, "Yes, it's true. What can you do?" Their laughter, their silent endorsement, was a fresh wound, deeper and more painful than Serena's initial barb. It was an affirmation that their daughter's cruel assessment was not just hers, but theirs too. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken judgment. Even the gentle clinking of glasses seemed to stop, replaced by a sudden, unnerving silence that amplified the ringing in my ears. I stood there, frozen, utterly exposed. The shame was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I wanted to cry, to scream, to lash out, but years of conditioning had taught me to swallow my emotions, to present a stoic front. I focused on a point just beyond Mr. Thorne's shoulder, trying to project an aura of indifference, even as my world crumbled around me. I could feel the heat of tears stinging my eyes, threatening to betray my carefully constructed composure. Mr. Thorne, however, remained utterly silent. He didn't laugh with my parents. He didn't offer a sympathetic glance. He didn't even flinch. His piercing blue eyes simply moved from Serena's smug face to my parents' nodding heads, and then finally settled on me. He watched me, truly watched me, with an intensity that made me feel both vulnerable and, strangely, seen. It was as if he was processing every nuance of the interaction, every unspoken word, every subtle power dynamic at play. His expression was unreadable, a blank canvas that offered no hint of his thoughts. The silence stretched, becoming unbearable. Serena's triumphant smile began to falter, a flicker of unease crossing her features as Mr. Thorne continued to observe. My parents shifted uncomfortably, their laughter dying in their throats. The spotlight, which Serena had so gleefully directed at me, was now firmly fixed on all of them, on their collective cruelty, their quiet complicity. Then, after what felt like an eternity, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Mr. Thorne's lips. It wasn't a kind smile, nor was it malicious. It was a smile of quiet revelation, of profound understanding. His gaze, still fixed on me for a moment longer, held a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher, perhaps a hint of pity, or perhaps something akin to respect. He then turned his full attention to Serena, his voice calm, clear, and cutting through the suffocating silence like a scalpel. "Interesting," he said, his voice resonating with an authority that silenced the entire room. Every head turned, every conversation ceased. All eyes were on him, on Serena, on the unfolding drama. "Because you are fired." The words hung in the air, sharper than any blade. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. Serena's mocking smile vanished, replaced by a look of utter disbelief, her jaw slack. My parents' faces, moments before contorted in amusement, now froze in wide-eyed horror. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The silence that followed was even more profound than before, a vast, echoing void where only seconds ago there had been a cacophony of judgment. Serena stammered, "What? Mr. Thorne, what are you talking about?" Her voice was thin, reedy, stripped of its usual confidence. Her perfectly coiffed facade began to crack. Mr. Thorne didn't raise his voice, but his tone left no room for argument. "You heard me, Serena. You are fired. Effective immediately." He paused, his gaze sweeping over my stunned parents, then back to Serena's rapidly paling face. Thorne Innovations prides itself on integrity, professionalism, and fostering a supportive environment for all its employees. Your behavior, your public display of malice towards your own sister, and the casual contempt with which you treat another human being, regardless of their relation to you, is not only unprofessional, but fundamentally antithetical to the values we uphold. It speaks volumes about your character, or rather, the lack thereof. My parents rushed forward, their faces a mask of frantic apologies and desperate pleas. "Mr. Thorne, please, there must be some mistake. Serena is an excellent employee. She was just joking, a family joke," my mother stammered, wringing her hands. My father, usually so composed, looked utterly bewildered, his face a mottled red. Mr. Thorne merely raised a hand, stopping them mid-sentence. There is no mistake, and this was no joke. I've been observing Serena's interactions with junior staff, her dismissive attitude towards colleagues she deems beneath her, and her general lack of empathy for some time. This evening, however, has provided a crystal-clear demonstration of her true character. I cannot, in good conscience, have someone with such a blatant disregard for others representing my company, let alone managing a team. He turned to Serena, his eyes cold and unwavering. "Your severance package will be delivered to your home address tomorrow. Do not report to work." Serena, usually so composed, so in control, finally broke. Tears welled in her eyes, not of remorse, but of pure, unadulterated fury and humiliation. "You can't do this," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I'm your best manager. I brought in your biggest accounts." Your performance, while adequate, did not outweigh the corrosive effect your personality had on team morale, Mr. Thorne stated calmly, his voice devoid of emotion. "Good evening, everyone." And with that, he turned, gave me one last, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement, perhaps of shared understanding, or maybe even a quiet vindication, and walked out of the banquet hall, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. The party, once vibrant, now felt like a wake. Serena stood frozen, her face a mask of shattered pride, her emerald gown suddenly looking like a mockery. My parents, utterly mortified, tried to gather themselves, but their usual air of superiority had been irrevocably shattered. They looked at me, then at Serena, then at the empty space where Mr. Thorne had stood. Their world turned upside down. My own reaction was a dizzying mix of emotions. Shock, certainly, disbelief. But beneath it all, a slow, warm wave of vindication spread through me. It wasn't just Serena who had been called out. It was the entire toxic dynamic of our family, exposed and dismantled in the most public, spectacular way imaginable. For the first time, I felt truly seen, truly heard, not by my family, but by an impartial observer who had recognized the injustice. Serena eventually stormed out, her exit far less graceful than her entrance, leaving my parents to face the awkward stares and whispered conversations of the remaining guests. They tried to salvage the evening, to explain it away, but the damage was done. The golden child had been publicly tarnished, and the family's carefully constructed image of perfection had crumbled. In the weeks and months that followed, the fallout was immense. Serena struggled to find new employment. Her reputation, once pristine, was now tainted by the story that inevitably spread through industry circles. She was no longer the golden girl. She was the one who had been fired by a CEO at a family party for her character flaws. My parents, who had always basked in her reflected glory, found themselves facing a different kind of scrutiny. Their constant championing of Serena and their dismissal of me now seemed less like parental concern and more like blindness, or worse, complicity in cruelty. For me, the experience was transformative. The public humiliation I had anticipated had turned into an unexpected triumph. It wasn't a triumph I had sought, but one that had been delivered with poetic justice. The shame I had carried for so long began to lift. I found a new confidence, a quiet strength that had been buried under years of self-doubt. My art, once a source of family disapproval, now became a symbol of my resilience. I poured my emotions, my newfound clarity, into my work, and it resonated with a deeper authenticity. My client list grew, my income stabilized, and for the first time, I felt truly successful on my own terms. My relationship with my family remained strained. Serena, consumed by bitterness, blamed me for her downfall, despite my having said nothing. My parents, humbled and perhaps a little regretful, tried to mend fences, but the trust was broken. They saw me differently now, not as a failure, but as someone who had, in a strange twist of fate, emerged victorious. They still didn't fully understand my artistic path, but they no longer openly dismissed it. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. The silence of Mr. Thorne, his observant gaze, and his decisive action had not just fired my sister, it had liberated me. It taught me that true worth isn't dictated by titles or salaries, or even by the approval of your family. It's recognized by those who see beyond the surface, by those who value integrity and kindness. And sometimes, just sometimes, the quiet observer is the one who holds the power to right a profound wrong, turning humiliation into the most unexpected and deeply satisfying form of revenge.